Hey, Alli, do you think that we should be relying on government and policymakers to straighten out the obesity problem and fitness in schools and nutrition?
Maybe there are strategies from the top down, from legislation, and then there's these strategies from the bottom up, from the grassroots. And luckily, we have Miss Liz Clark with us today, who is the president and CEO of the Health and Fitness Association, that's going to share with us how we can go at it from both directions.
Let's dive in. But before we do, let's give a shout out to our lovely listener, Jill Benson. Thank you for listening to the Girls Talk Healthy Aging podcast. Let's dive in now.
Welcome to the Girls Talk Healthy Aging podcast, where we dive deep into pressing health and fitness issues facing aging women. I'm Alli Kerr.
And I'm Shawna Kaminski. And together we'll bring candid conversations, expert advice, and personal stories that will inspire and empower you on your own wellness journey.
We are so fortunate, lucky, excited to have you on today with us, Liz. So welcome to the Girls Talk Healthy Aging podcast, the first female president and CEO of the Health and Fitness Association. Congratulations and welcome.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Oh, I was just going to say, before we get started, can you give us a little heads up on, for those that don't know, what is the HFA, the Health and Fitness Association?
Yeah. So it's perfect timing for that question because we've just gone through a rebrand of the organization in March at our trade show. So we are the Health and Fitness Association, a global community of industry leaders, formerly known as IRSA. The rebrand, the name was all very deliberate as part of the design of what we want to do organizationally in the future. And I think we can talk about that a little bit more today, but it was a very deliberate brand. And when people ask me, what is HFA or who do you represent? I say we're gyms and fitness centers and all the stuff that goes in them. So the treadmills, the lockers, the flooring, the supplements, we're a pretty vast and growing and diverse industry. And so we needed to have a brand that reflected that.
And Liz, with you at the helm of this organization now, how has that transition been changing, going? Can you just walk us through where things were when you took the leadership and where y'all, kind of how you've managed to maneuver through COVID and beyond?
Yeah, thank you for that, Alli. So for those that don't know the story or weren't involved in the industry, but during COVID, we know that 30% of gyms and fitness centers went out of business permanently. We know we were one of the first industries to close and one of the last to open. And as a result, our membership grew really frustrated that that's how we were treated by the government, that we were not seen as essential. We were not seen as a healthy, safe place. And so what our leadership did is they said, we need to change the leadership of this organization from the top down. And what that needs to include is somebody that knows how advocacy works and that can advocate for this industry, because that's what we learned the hard lesson of COVID is that what I say is if you're not at the table, you're on the menu, and we were on the menu. We weren't given any PPP. We weren't given any additional funds that so many other industries did because they knew how to do it. And so we weren't structured that way. We weren't operating that way. And so I decided very deliberately to pivot the organization a little bit away from a meetings and events based organization, because we do have a phenomenal amount of meetings and a terrific event. But we also need to be more focused on advocacy and communications, which is my background. So it was a very deliberate shift and a shift of what that means organizationally. So I've been in the seat now for 3 years. We're turning the Titanic. It doesn't turn overnight. And it's been good to see the progress we've made. And I'm excited about what the future entails, but it's really about a little bit of an identity crisis too, of what we want to be today and what we want to be in the future. And so those are the conversations I'm navigating with people that have been the founders of the organization to those that literally joined the organization last week. So everybody wants to be seen as essential. Everybody wants to be seen as preventative healthcare. They want to be recognized as a respected player in the business community. And so we've got some work to do with that.
And what about preventative healthcare? I want to talk about that because that's one of the things that Shawna and I are passionate about. And we've both, I own a fitness facility, and Shawna is online, and she has also owned fitness facilities. And one of the things we're constantly preaching is that if we can take care of ourselves and we can do the things that are going to help us to stay stronger and keep our bones healthy and keep our minds healthy and help with stress and anxiety and move more to keep our weight in the right area, that is going to just help us stay out of the doctor's office, that could help our whole, not just state, community, United States, our whole world. So what's going on in the realm of preventative, and how does the Health and Fitness Association weave into that area?
Yeah, thanks. It's the North Star of what we are trying to make our narrative right now. And so for a long time, when this industry established itself, it was really built out of, if I'm being honest, so vanity and just to try to make your body look better. And when we saw a year or two ago that the number one reason people are exercising is for their mental health, that's a really strong talking point for us. So to be able to say that people are exercising, moving for things more than just how you look in spandex, is I think an important part of the narrative. And what I've said is, let's take it a step farther and get into this preventative healthcare conversation. It's part of why we rebranded to have the word health very deliberately as our first letter of the Health and Fitness Association. And if you step back and you look at what the costs of obesity are in this country, we know that in the next 10 years, it's going to cost over $9 trillion to treat obesity. And over 4 trillion of that is going to fall on the US government. So if the US government can be working on some programs or some planning that actually help get people moving, you think about, what does it cost to build a park? What does it cost to give somebody a gym membership? What does it cost to send a kid to a youth sports camp? A lot cheaper than what it's going to cost for a bypass surgery or a lifetime of obesity drugs, or so on and so forth. So we have a real economic argument that we can be making in this, and then that coupled with the mental health conversation has been really important. And one of the things, as part of my job and my team here, is that I think a lot of us know that in this space. Those of us that work out regularly or own facilities, you know what that means to exercise and how you feel and what that does. But that's probably 23% of our population. So even though so much of this sort of just seems like an inherent no duh thing, it's our job to be making sure that we're connecting those dots to lawmakers and decision makers and influencers to influence the policy ultimately how we want to. But we got some work to do. And the good news is that, what I say is, we're the good guys. So we're the ones that are out there saying all we want people to do is to live longer, healthier lives. And we have the magic pill. Exercise is medicine, and we just need to get more people doing it.
You had mentioned at the beginning that you had some stats that you wanted to share with us. So I think now would be a great time to throw out some actual statistics of what's going on health-wise.
Yeah, so I think specifically to the aging community, we've got some really great stats that have come out there in our recent consumer report, that we know that now older Americans are the most frequent users of gyms and fitness facilities. And I thought a really interesting stat that I saw was that in 2023, last year, there were 9.5 million older folks exercising, which was up 20% from 2019. So it's the fastest growing area of growth. Seniors are staying longer in the gym. They're seeing how it's preventing, not only from the healthcare side, but also it's the social side. It's preventing loneliness, other challenges like that. And then you even get into what it means, and some of the other things from older people exercising, as far as it prevents falls, it prevents high blood pressure, it prevents bone health. We've even seen exercise preventing some cancers and Alzheimer's and dementia. So the data and the stats that are coming out are truly amazing. But I think it's important, especially for this older community. It's harder for them to get used to going to the gym it's like everybody has habits, and it's hard to start a habit when you're older. So an important part of our message is to get people of all ages in and comfortable and exercising and understanding the benefits, so that it's not as much of an intimidating bite to take later on in life, even though we're seeing that it's happening. So a lot of great stuff in that consumer report. I'll also just say it says that we think with 150 minutes of moderate aerobic activity or 75 minutes of vigorous activity weekly is the path to success for older Americans as well. So it's achievable. We're not saying that everybody needs to go run a marathon every week. Yeah, but if you do, that's great too.
Well, yes, but making it more accessible, making it user-friendly, and making it less intimidating. And I'm always talking about a all or something approach. You don't, if you're not doing it all, if you're not doing 150, but you're getting some in, you're going to be expanding your lifespan and your health span. I mean, your health span over just your lifespan. So quality.
Right. And I mean, I even say that to my kids sometimes. I'm like, get out of your room, get out of your dark room, get off the Xbox and, go outside for 15 minutes, go for a walk. And maybe it's, it's not a vigorous activity, but it's outside, it's a change of scene. And what that does just for everyone's mental health is a game changer.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Bringing in the whole idea of mental health, I think is, obviously it's backed by statistics, but as exercisers, we know that we feel better when we're exercising, but people don't know what they don't know. So if you are low energy and maybe depressed, like the last thing you might think of doing is going for a walk. And something as simple as that can really lift your mood. And this is not to discount, people that need medication for depression and that kind of thing. Like, that's another story. But generally speaking, our mental health can be improved with movement.
Yeah, Shawna, I think that that's an important part to make is that we're not necessarily the magic pill, the panacea for all things when it comes to mental health. There's all kinds of a scale of what that looks like. But I'm on the board of the Physical Activity Alliance, which is an interesting group of diverse interests, and that includes the American Medical Association, youth sports organizations, physical therapists associations. So it's an interesting, diverse group of people that all at our core believe in, in exercise. And so what we recently said is, well, what are the things we all know that the exercise does? 3 things. And we were in a room of 100 experts in this, and somebody said, so what are the 3 things? And like nobody could identify it. So we said, well, this is scary. And then we just stepped back and said, we know that exercise improves your sleep, it improves anxiety, and it improves blood pressure. So we were like, it was a little bit like, keep it simple, stupid. Like, let's just step back a little and not get all crowded on, stats and things and just say, what are the things we know? And that we were like, yeah. So let's just start articulating that and putting that message out there in a different way that's obviously a pretty digestible message.
Mm-hmm. We're going to interrupt this interview for just a second because we've got something we want to make sure that you know.
If you're struggling with your health, with your fitness, if you don't know where to start or you know what to do and you're not doing it, we're here for you.
And all you need to do to get our help is to reach out to Shawna and I at our email, sapodcast23@gmail.com. And we're happy to help and we will be in touch. Now back to the show. And Liz, with your work and advocacy, Shawna and I work on I would call it the bottom up approach. We're working with ladies, maybe in a small group or one-on-one, and you're working at what I would call that more top down approach. And a lot of our listeners may feel like this is like an overwhelming challenge to overcome the obesity, the health issues that we have, diabetes, high blood pressure, mental health, all these things it can be so daunting if you're just this one little person that is living your life here. And can you educate us or just kind of help us understand the importance of what you do on the top down and how that's different, but also how it impacts the little gals that are out
That's
here.
Right. Yep. So listen, I think an important thing to think about with advocacy, and everybody says advocacy, I don't know what that is. I don't do that. That's not my lane. Somebody else does it. And the reality is if you're not doing that yourself, nobody else really is doing it behind you. We as an organization are doing everything we can from the top down, but advocacy is really your own responsibility and it pays for itself. It really, truly is almost like an insurance program. So I think if you look at all of the threats from state regulators, legislators, everything from taxation to zoning laws to AEDs required in your facility, that's all the stuff that if you can get a policy change on that, that could be a game changer for your business. And you can do that if you have a relationship with your local official. It's a conversation. It's about a business. It's about what is this going to cost? What are the jobs that we're going to lose? And people understand that. And so if you're not there advocating for yourself to do that on that level, again, there's too many threats on so many levels. So what I would say is when you think about advocacy, don't get overwhelmed with it. Think of it as an insurance policy. But when you look at it as an organization, I'll tell you, yes, we at HFA are doing things like we're working with the White House and their Council on Nutrition and Education, or Nutrition and Exercise. We are working with the CDC. We are working with both the House and the Senate. We are working with the American Medical Association. We are working with all of sort of the high-end folks up here that ultimately can make some big decisions for us as well. But when I talk about an effective advocacy program, I really think it's like three legs to a stool. And it starts first with literally what I call shoe leather lobbying. And that is meeting your legislators, meeting your mayor, meeting, whoever is local to you, inviting them into your facility. That is you putting the shoe leather in to get them to understand your business. And so I'm doing that here with my team in DC on Capitol Hill every day. And so the other piece of when we're effectively doing this out in the real world, you call that grassroots. So that's where you're leveraging your community and you bond together and you say, well, yeah, that would really, what if we couldn't use these liability waivers? And then all of a sudden somebody's on a treadmill and falls and then they sue us and we're out of business. Well, then you should put together a coalition of local people to build a relationship and make that argument. Now we'll come in, we'll help, but that's the grassroots piece of that as well. And then the third is the communication side of it. So if you're doing all this work and you're not communicating it out, if you're not doing podcasts to tell people about it, if you're not writing articles, if you're not putting stuff on social media, you're doing all that work without getting the additional sort of benefit. So I think if you look at it from those three legs of the stool, it can be less of a daunting thing to really think about. And then, when you say, what could we be doing? I'll tell you, we do a fly-in to Washington, D.C. every year. And people say, what's a fly-in? It's like you literally fly to Washington, D.C. or drive. I don't care. You can take a pogo stick. I don't really care how you get here. But and we organize meetings all over Capitol Hill for folks to go in and to tell their story. And people say, well, I don't know how to do that. I'm just running my gym. I've never been to Washington. I said, the only thing you got to do is get a nice dress and some comfortable shoes and come to DC. So you got to look the part because these are professional old folks here that are kind of stuck in their ways. But then all you do is tell your story. How long have you been employed? Are you a family business? That type of thing. And they love that. And then as far as the policy goes, we put all the policy wonks in those meetings with you'll be with me, you'll be with other people that'll handle all that stuff. So don't even worry about, getting that. But what I would say is really think about coming to Washington. I believe our dates are May 7 to 9 this year. And it's a really cool experience. And so far, everybody that's been to one of these fly-ins has said, I'm definitely coming back. I've seen how important it is, and I see the impact that it makes. So that's a pretty rewarding experience. We try to use your time very wisely. And we might throw something fun in, like a baseball game or a soccer game or something like that, or a cool rooftop reception overlooking the White House, that type of thing. So it's a cool city, and we're able to do a lot of cool things with it. But I would invite people to come and to get some exposure to it.
So I apologize for my ignorance, but is like the HFA is based in the United States, but it is international. Like, what would be the equivalent in Canada?
Yeah, great question. So there is generally an association in most countries that focus on this. So the differentiator is, so in Canada specifically, it's FIC. And FIC is the organization that's advocating specifically for Canadian policy. Now, we at HFA, you're right, we are an international organization. So what does that mean? Yes, we're based in DC. We're based obviously in the US, but we are, again, the global community of industry leaders. So That means when I look at international advocacy, I look at it a little differently. So I wouldn't necessarily be going to the Capitol in Canada, but I'd be working as closely as I can with FIC with things that we've learned. Policies, for example, that we've been able to pass around music licensing and things like that to say, hey, here's the roadmap, here's the toolkit, you go do this in Canada. So we have that to hand to all of the associations around the world. But on the international advocacy front, there is a lot of work also to be done with the World Health Organization, with the OECD, who's the international business community, to again really be a part of this conversation. And even last year, I was with the WHO in Switzerland and even said, you've got to change how you're even referring to our sector. You're calling our sector sport and leisure. And that's not the right identity for us. So we've got some work there to do. And so that's our job. And we're going to continue to do that at the most highest international level, but then provide tools and resources for other countries to be able to do it themselves.
And what about our listeners that are not gym owners, that are just interested in health and fitness and want to be well and want to make sure their family is well? What are some things that maybe they should know or that they can do to make a difference?
Yeah. So I think that, we've got a really important election coming up. And what I would say first and foremost is register to vote. People tend to get really caught up on the presidential election. And yes, that's a big one and that matters. But there's a lot of other votes down the ballot that are really important and they can affect individuals and their communities. Things like the school board and what is the school board going to do for exercise in schools? Things like the mayor. What is the mayor looking at doing with outside space and how are they looking at using it? Are they going to build bike lanes? So I think that thinking about getting more connected to these people that are making decisions that will impact livelihood is really important. I would also say on the other side, if you're not a gym owner, but if you go to a gym, I would say get to know that management a little bit better and to say, what's frustrating them, what's challenging them, and let's have a conversation about it. And what I'm doing to my members who are the gym owners is to say, I want you inviting all of these local officials into your facilities as much as you can. If you are opening a new one, if you are opening a recovery section of your gym, have a ribbon cutting and have the mayor there. There's stuff like that we could be doing better, and they want to do it. These people they love photo ops, and then to be able to come to a photo op at such a healthy, wonderful place. They're not coming to a pork factory where it smells and you've got to wear a hairnet and that's important too, but we've got a little bit of a cool advantage because our industry is pretty amazing to be able to invite people in to be a part of it.
Yeah, it's a happy story as well, to be advocating for people's health, because who's not going to get behind somebody that's like looking after your health?
And right, and if you're exercising, you are already advocating for your own health by doing the hard work, you know. So we're in an interesting conversation right now about weight loss drugs, and what does that mean for the future of our industry? And so my take is that what I want is as many people moving as much as possible. Like I said earlier, we got about 23% of Americans working out. And I hear people say, well, how do you get to the other 70%? I'm like, the other 70%, how do you get to the next 7%, right? And so my hope and dream is that these weight loss drugs that many people are getting on, who are not typically people that go to the gym or that exercise, that it transforms their life in a way that makes them say, hey, now I do feel healthy. And now I want to continue to feel healthy. And I don't want to be on these things forever. And now that I've maybe cheated a little bit to get there, but now I can, tone my muscles and, do all the right things. And so my hope is that we can live harmonious in that. And so I'm not fighting them whatsoever. People have said, well, what are we going to do about big pharma? I said, big pharma doesn't care what we're doing. They got other problems that they're dealing with. So I think it's going to be a wild evolution to see what that does to the health of our world. In the next 3 to 5 years, I think we are going to see obesity come down. And then I think we have a real opportunity to market that, to say, okay, now you've lost a bunch of weight. Now don't you want to tone your muscles and tighten your arm fat and all that stuff. And so I think that there's a tremendous opportunity coming with it all.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I think, and we've talked a lot about GLP-1s on the podcast with doctors, with actual patients that have been, their experience taking the drugs, and I think collectively we can say we're all for them for the right patient, because it's when it's health related and it's going to be improving health metrics, then yes, all for it. Maybe vanity, not so much. But it's interesting that you say that in the past, people that went to, health centers, fitness centers, it was more about aesthetics. And the push now is more about health. Be interesting if, we get lots, if it's going to swing back to aesthetics after, how pendulums do that. So,
and especially, yes, in our industry, especially, we have a wide pendulum. We have a lot of fads. I think we're seeing right now what's going on with pickleball. There's never been anything hotter than pickleball ever in the world, right? Like, we're seeing how much people are in love with Pilates and how amazing that is. Okay. And now it's like, I think it's really interesting to see people going to, I've been on this tour around the country to see a lot of my different member facilities, and seeing people that are coming into these facilities, not even to exercise. I'm seeing people coming in for the child care, because it's the mom who just had a baby who just needs a minute, and they've got a cafe in their facility. She just wants to go have a coffee and have somebody watch her baby in a safe place for 45 minutes. We're seeing people come in and doing stretch classes, right? What that means. We're seeing the cold plunge coming back. We're seeing people come in and just using the recovery portion of what that means, and then again, other things that you could call fads or not, cryo. It's a wild place out there, but it's bringing more people in, and I think it's been great. But I just think it's going to continue to evolve, but that's what part of makes this so awesome.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it would be nice if we could still keep that core on health, and I think when people know better, they do better. And there's so much misinformation out there related to diet, nutrition, and exercise. But there are some bright lights getting through the noise. So I'm hoping that more people are feeling more informed about, like the organization that the impact that your organization is trying to have, that it's like 150 minutes, 75 minutes. Like, it doesn't have to be, you don't have to be a committed athlete. You don't have to be an Olympian. Fitness is for everyone.
Yep.
Hopefully that message is going to come through, because it's about our health and longevity. And
yeah, well, and listen, if I'm being honest, we've got a little bit of an image and reputation problem to fix. I think that when, this industry was born, it was really born out of a massive vanity bodybuilder industry, and that, steroids was rampant everywhere, diseases at clubs because they were dirty, making it really hard to get out of a gym membership. So we kind of came on the scene as maybe not the best actor. And so we've got a lot of this image and reputation to repair. So I think you're absolutely right, Shawna, that I hope too that the bigger, broader story is one that we can tell. It's one that I am confident that we are telling in a really smart way to the right people. But having to repair, a couple legacies of that, it's not going to happen overnight.
Yeah, we are digging ourselves out of a hole with the whole bro science, but more educated people their voices are getting heard, and that's going to take us a long way.
And now we have a female heading the HFA, which has never happened. This is the first. You are the first. So that is definitely going to change the way that you have different eyes that you're looking at this through. I would love to hear a little bit about where you were before HFA and how you've transitioned to here, because I think that our listeners will get a kick out of your just the trend where you were and where you are. So We're gonna go there, Liz. Let's
I
go
love it.
there.
I know it's all good. No, no, no. Listen, I have no shame in my past.
Exactly.
That's right. So listen, um I'll start by just saying, as the first female, it's been amazing, and I've been welcomed by a pretty male-dominated industry, which has been really great. And I think it says a lot about the evolution of our industry just in and of itself there. So that's been fantastic. But my background has always been in association management and advocacy. So I actually started my career in the chemical industry, and then I went to the US Chamber of Commerce and ran international trade policy. And then before this was at the National Confectioners Association running government affairs. So yes, the candy manufacturers. And I was there for a decade, and it was a fantastic industry. It still is. But I was able to keep candy manufacturing essential during COVID. So you look at that, and so we couldn't keep our doors open, but we could be making candy. And I'll tell you, guess what? Our candy sales doubled, double digit, all through COVID. So there were just different ways to do it, and I know how to do it. So there were, when I got in the board, there was a couple people say, "Well, what do you mean? She's not from the industry?" And I said, because I'm from the association industry, which is what I think you want. If you want somebody that knows all the ins and outs of running a club, you had that, and that didn't work. So so it's kind of a little interesting where I'm getting educated on all of that, and that matters because it matters on what we're going to advocate for. But at the end of the day, if you're a good advocate, you can advocate for anything. And so for me, this has been a pretty easy transition because it's one that I'm personally passionate about, and one that's been easy to, I haven't even had to learn talking points. I might have to learn stats, but I'm just a natural believer in it anyway. So it's been a cool journey, and one that might look a little ironic from the outside. But at the end of the day, what I would say is I think candy and exercise have a very important relationship on each other. I know a lot of people that eat a lot of peanut M&Ms, and then they exercise to work off all the all those calories. So I'm not going to judge on that, but I think it's been a good relationship.
Wow, that's so interesting.
Yeah, I love it. And I love that you are saying exactly what we need as far as, look, if you know how to do this over here, then you're doing this over here too. It's the same thing. You're just doing it for a different industry. And that's part of that education and understanding how our government works, how lobbying works, how all of these associations work. And as for us as gym owners or us as listeners that are consumers, it's important, I feel like, for us to have a better understanding of how things work, and you know how to get things done. So thank you for taking on the Health and Fitness Association.
Thank you. Well, I'll give you a little secret, right? And it's relationships. That's when it comes down to. And when you're, everybody was trying, to get married at COVID, to all these people making the decisions when we hadn't even been dating, and so it's like a long-term get to know these people, have a relationship with them, make sure they're educated over time. And then ultimately, when you got your ask, you'll have your ask, and they'll have your ear, and all of that. And that goes for every level of government. It frankly goes for every level in business management too, right? It just all comes down to relationships. And so if you invest time on the front end, and hopefully it's a two-way street, I think a lot of good things can come from that.
And I do like your message that, just average Mrs. Jones, Mrs. Smith out there shouldn't just wait for someone like yourself to get it all done. There's very grassroots level that you can, take note in your own community. Is there a park? Is there a safe bike lane for kids? What's happening with phys ed as a former educator and teacher? What's happening to fitness in schools? And having conversations at a lower, you don't have to go to the, president of the United States. You can go talk to the principal at your kid's school.
Yep. Every voice matters. And that's where, and everybody can be, and needs to be and should be as active as possible. There's too much work to get done, and there's too many threats and challenges on our doorstep and on the horizon. So the more proactive anybody can be in this space, the stronger we all are for it.
If you had a wish for our listeners today, Liz, what would it be?
Well, I guess it would probably be a two-part. The first part would be easy, and it would be get up, move your body. But I had imagined that probably most of your listeners are already doing that. And my second would be is to take on a project. Think about, like we just talked about, what is it that you think you might be able to impact, whether it is something in your school or your community or your neighborhood, or your gym that you belong to, or the local chamber of commerce that is active in this stuff. Ask questions and explore and be curious, because there's a lot of smart people. You have a lot of really smart listeners, and that probably have a lot of great solutions to problems. And so I think we can be problem solvers. We are, as an industry, a problem solving industry, but I think so many people that are a part of this on a day-to-day are solving the problem of their own healthcare, their own mental health. You're already doing that. Just go, my wish would be to go one step farther and see what you can do to maybe have a little impact on a piece of policy somewhere.
Alli?
My wish would be that we all recognize how much we can do. Even if I'm the little gal, I can make an impact.
And my wish would be, before you maybe go to the principal or try to affect policy and you notice that your neighbor never gets outside, just go invite them for a walk. Notice the people around you. As women, we have such a huge influence on our friends and family. And if we're looking after our own health, being that example and being inclusive, maybe encouraging others just by inviting them in to be active with something simple, then that kind of builds the groundswell of grassroots as well. And then there's more of us that are going to have an effect on that, a positive effect on those policies that your organization is pushing through.
They're pretty good wishes.
Thanks for listening. You'll find me, Alli, on Instagram at Alli Kerr Fitness.
And you'll find me, Shawna, on Instagram at Shawna Kaminski. Feel free to pop us a DM with questions and or feedback. If you're enjoying the Girls Talk Healthy Aging podcast, please subscribe and share it with other health-minded women. Ratings and reviews are also much appreciated and help us get our message out to a larger audience.
Until next time, be healthy and be happy.